We all have guilty pleasures, that's just a fact. For one reason or another, there's always a movie or TV show that, despite being cringy or awkward or just flat out bad, we can still seem to be able to enjoy a lot more than other better movies. And for me, one of my biggest guilty pleasures is Hannibal, the TV show. Don't get me wrong, there's plenty of good things in Hannibal, and a lot of critics have actually praised it. It also has a big, passionate fan base that hasn't given up hope on somehow bringing back the show since it was cancelled. And I honestly really like this show. I've watched it twice already, and I can easily watch it one more time. I just can't say that it's a great show or a good one. Hannibal is just strange. It's a prequel to the events that happen in the Red Dragon novel. We follow Agent Will Graham teaming up with Hannibal Lecter, played masterfully by Mads Mikkelsen, and they both help the FBI catch a lot of serial killers. Like, a lot. And they're all like really creative and evil. But I will get back to that in a moment. First, I think I should talk about the positive aspects of this show. The production design, first of all, is absolutely stunning. This alone makes the show very enjoyable to watch, with the exception of very few bad CGI moments.
Like the title sequence.
The show is just wonderful to look at, and the beauty of this show does not end there. The directing and cinematography really bring to a whole new level the beauty that this show can offer. It can also get very creepy when it has to, as well as very elegant and refined in the dinner scenes that Hannibal prepares. This also sometimes makes me feel quite uncomfortable because even though a lot of times these beautiful scenes of Hannibal cooking involve actual food, a few times they show Hannibal actually cooking someone that he killed. So even though the food always looks beautiful, a lot of times I just feel uneasy watching these scenes, which is definitely what the writers and directors wanted to achieve. And I think that's where my praise for this show will stop, unfortunately. The biggest problem that I have with Hannibal is probably the screenwriting. While the directing, acting, and pretty much everything else is serious and dark, I just can't take the script seriously. The show is very over the top. Some villains are just cartoonish, and I also gotta say that even though I really appreciate the focus on PTSD and other mental health problems, the scripts are just bad most of the times. A good example of this is what I mentioned earlier about the very evil and creative serial killers. I know that the characters sometimes go to other cities, but honestly I can't take this show seriously when almost every single episode they show us a crazy villain with a twisted backstory putting a lot of time and effort on their crimes. But like to an insane degree, with a lot of theatricality, and there's even an episode where a serial killer not just kidnaps and murders his victims, but he sort of sedates them or something. It's been a while since I watched that episode. And then he uses their bodies to harvest mushrooms or honey or something. And it's not like he does that to one or two people. I remember seeing the scene and there were like 10 people that he did that to. He is just one of them though. I know that there's a lot of bad people in the world, but Hannibal just wants you to accept that there's tons of supervillains in a very small area in Maryland, and that all of them are committing insane, sick crimes like this. I think there's also another guy that uses guts from people to create the best kind of violin strings or something like that. The show also wants you to accept that all of them are super smart and have crazy specific skills and anatomy knowledge. I just can't. I just can't. I think the Hannibal movies work a lot better because they don't have 12 hours of runtime to squeeze in as many supervillains as they can. It's usually one bad guy per movie, and that makes much more sense. Like I said, I know there's a lot of evil people in the world, but I just can't accept that there's like 20 supervillains committing insane crimes in Baltimore. On a side note, I know that we all accept way crazier things in movies and TV. Just look at the superhero movies we watch. However, when they take their own show so incredibly seriously, it just makes it a lot harder for me to believe what they want me to believe. In a superhero movie, they rarely take themselves that seriously unless you're Christopher Nolan. Sure, they respect the source material and they don't make a joke out of the whole project, but where I want to go with this is that there's usually a balance. Hannibal is way over the top and silly, and they just try to take this show too seriously. I think this show would work a bit better with more cohesion between the screenwriting and directing. The over-the-top and at sometimes silly scripts mixed with the serious approach in the directing style, editing, and
pretty much everything else in the show makes the show feel very, very disjointed.
It's like, it is a mess. And I think now it is time to talk about the elephant in the room. Hugh Dancy, the protagonist that plays Will Graham, is a pretty good actor, and he has his pretty good moments in Hannibal. However, like I said before, he doesn't have much to work with due to the just awful scripts that he has. And I think that this is the best way to introduce another big issue that I have with the show.
The cringe.
When I watched the cold open of the first episode, I almost turned it off. One of the main things that the show does is this little sequence where they try to show you in a very stylized way how Will Graham gets inside of the killer's minds. He tends to do this whenever he sees a crime scene, and the whole show is about him figuring out crimes that normal people can't. And the way they do this is incredibly
Cringy.
It took me a few episodes to get used to this thing. The
This is my design.
catchphrase still haunts my dreams.
This is my design. This is my design. This is my design. This is my design.
I gotta admit that on the second season they seemed to tone it down because hopefully they realized that it was really cringy and silly. But unfortunately the catchphrase still remains and it's too much. And this is something that I forgot to write in my script, so sorry if it's not that, well, redacted I guess. I don't know, I'm just speaking my mind right now. But anyways, the thing that I wanted to mention before I finish recording this video is that I really don't like that Will Graham is such a boring character and that the whole show is called Hannibal and Hannibal is not the main character. It obviously is Will, it's Will's story, and Hannibal is probably the second biggest character in the whole show. He has a very big impact on the show, but it really bugs me that it's called Hannibal instead of Will Graham. But obviously they made that choice because first of all, Hannibal is a lot more recognizable as a name and as a brand as Will Graham, even though he's really well known in the circles that like this whole universe of movies and TV shows that are not it's not a universe, it's just like different shows based on the same characters. And it also bugs me so much because Mads Mikkelsen he steals the show even though he's not always there as much as Will Graham, and that's usually a thing that happens a lot in the Hannibal movies. But anyways, lastly I want to say in this little edit section that I really was skeptical when I started watching this show before Hannibal showed up, and it took a very long time. I think it was like 30 minutes before we saw Hannibal, and it was worth it. I think it was a really good introduction of the character, and I was really scared that it would just kind of taint the image and like the iconic performances that Sir Anthony Hopkins gave us. But I think that this is a very different portrayal. Obviously it's a different actor, and it's like, for me he's just as good but in a very different way as the portrayal of Hannibal from Anthony Hopkins. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's just like apples and oranges. They're both pretty good and you can't really compare them.
So anyways, back to the scripted part of the video.
I know that it sounds like I really don't like this show, but I do. Like I said before, I've watched this show more than once because despite of all the negatives that I've mentioned, I just think that it's a very enjoyable show. And honestly, you don't need a reason to enjoy anything. After all, we're even talking about guilty pleasures. I overall think that this is not a very good show, but as a guilty pleasure, I think this has incredibly good quality.
Except on the screenwriting.
I have recommended this show to many of my friends too, so please don't think that I hate Hannibal. On the opposite, just writing this essay makes me wish they hadn't cancelled it. I really hope that another network sometimes lets its creator and crew finish what they started, and in the meantime I might just watch it once more. The cinematography and the second season alone make the whole show worth it. And when you just want to sit down and enjoy a TV show without having to think too much, Hannibal is the perfect choice. unless you don't like darker shows. But I can't lie and say that it's a very good show.
Man, I really hated those scripts.
So that's the video. Thank you so much for watching, and sorry it took me a long time to come back and create another video, but I'm really happy to have done it. Please, if you enjoyed it, like it, share it, and subscribe. That really helps. I know that before making this channel I promised myself I wouldn't ask for that, but it really does help. So anyways, thanks a lot and have a good day.